are there? Fine. Thank you. So next is Object Spy. Object Spy, either I can go through here, click on Object Spy, or from Tools, Object Spy. So when I click on Object Spy, the main purpose of the Object Spy is to recognize how QTP has recognized the objects and its properties. You can see there is a property screen. You can see there is an operation. There is an object hierarchy. So here it will list all properties of an object and operations, method. Operation means methods or actions that you can perform on that object. So everything is visible under Object Spy screen. This is for beginners or any new project that you do. This screen will help you to understand in fact how developers has coded that particular object. Please remember, every developer can code in their own way. They can add properties, they can create custom classes, they can use standard classes. So how it has been coded, it will be clear only if you go through this Object Spy. Right? So now I am opening so-called calculator. So I am opening a calculator just to understand how. I am just opening the calculator. Just a second. There are some intermediate screens. So I open calculator. In this calculator, let me recognize an object here. So in this calculator, let me just spy on an object. So I just spy, I clicked on to this hand symbol. As I click on the hand symbol, you can see that the screen has changed to with a hand. I don't know whether the hand is visible to you or not. Now I'm moving that to the button. As I move, you can see that the right hand side, the object has been spied. Are you able to see it? Please raise your hand. So now that hand is still there. I'm going to left click onto that hand, onto that one button. Now you can see that that object is now recognized in the Object Spy. So first is what is that it is recognized, how it is recognized. You can see now that Win button, the Win prefix indicates that this object is recognized by a standard Windows alien. Button indicates that it is a button object. Then this button is under the parent called calculator, window calculator. This is the parent of this object. So this is the hierarchy in which the object is identified. So in another sense, even to recognize this Win button, he also recognizes calculator as a parent. So because without a window calculator, Win button doesn't exist. So if first question that comes to our mind is, what made QTP to recognize this object as a button? Why this button is not recognized as edit box? So there should be some analogy or there should be some reference for QTP to make him to understand that this is a button, not some other object. What is that? That is what we call it as a native class or object class. This native class or object class, which is a predefined one, this is the one which is used by the developer. So native class means that developer used the control called button control when he developed this object. And because I have my add-in, standard Windows add-in, and that standard Windows add-in is able to convert that button as Win button. The Win button is a QTP class, QTP assigned class. That is what you see it here as a class name. This class name is a QTP assigned class name. And you can see this native class and object class. This is the class defined by the developer to that object. You and me cannot change this native class or an object class. Because this native class is button, QTP is able to recognize it as a button. And this type of recognition is called standard objects. Because the QTP is able to recognize the object in the way it has been developed. So there is no ambiguity in recognizing the object. Now this is what the standard object means. Next, you see the property set here, the properties that is being listed here. All the properties that is listed. This properties is same, don't confuse with value. This properties is same for all the buttons that it recognizes. In calculator, you have lot of buttons. Button 1, button 2, button 3, like that, a lot of buttons are there. Each for all the buttons, the left hand side properties are same. Operations are same. You can only do these operations that is allowed by QTP. These are all the operations that is allowed by QTP. So the operations means nothing but methods or actions. Properties are nothing but attributes or properties itself. So the properties are very important, and this property set, we call it as a set, is same for this button class. This is what we are trying to say in our what is object. When we said, we talked about it is a group of all the objects, the class. So for this class, all the properties that you see is same. For each and every object, now it is button 1. This property, say text property is the one, the value of the text property indicates that this is a one button. So the text property is one of the property which makes that button 1 recognizable. I can highlight it from here. Now you can see now I am going to highlight that in the application. So if I highlight it from here, now you can see now there is a blink. I don't know whether you are able to see it or able to see it. There was a blink there in the screen. Yes means raise your hand. Or anybody? There is a blink. Have you noticed it? I redo it. So I am clicking onto that spy, highlight. The highlight makes that object to recognize, right? And that object is what recognized by the QTP in the screen. So this highlight is nothing but a replay. So QTP is able to replay back on that object. So thank you. Now if you notice now, there are a lot of properties. There are properties called XY coordinates. You can see XY coordinates, and there is a property called absolute X and absolute Y. So absolute X is 101, absolute Y is 245. First is, what is absolute X? Absolute X is a property that is not assigned by the developer, that is retrieved by the Windows screen. Whenever Windows is able to recognize the object, he recognizes the object with reference to where that location of the object is. This button 1 object with reference to the screen, not with reference to the window calculator, with reference to my desktop screen, the position is starting with 101, 245, X coordinate 101, Y coordinate 245. This is where the location of calculator button is. If you see X and Y coordinate, the X and Y coordinates are nothing but within this parent, what is the location of button 1? Within the parent calculator, what is the location of X and Y? That is where you have this X and Y coordinates. So if I try to now move this calculator from top to bottom and then spy it again. I now move to the right. I am going to spy that button 1 again. See the difference of how the absolute X and absolute Y is recognized. So absolute X now 916 and Y is 507, and if you see the X and Y, it is remains the same. The reason being, with reference to the parent, the button 1 doesn't change its location, whereas is my voice clear to you? Is it fine? Please raise your hand if it is okay to you all. Yep. Fine, thank you. Now, if x and y coordinates are nothing but the coordinates with reference to the parent, these are all very important for your advanced concepts of QTP. Absolute x and absolute y are the coordinates with reference to the desktop window. So with reference to that, this is how the object is identified. And you can see the enabled property, focused, whether the object is focused by default or not, enabled, whether it is enabled, yes or no. H window is again a property. During runtime it changes, and this assigned H window is assigned by the window screen that assigns this value. Native class, object class we have discussed. What is native class exactly, what is object class, I will tell it in the next stage. Then regular expression window class, it's again a QTP class, because sometimes the class might have a variation, so you want to make sure that the unwanted things are removed from that class, so he keep that as a regular expression window class. REGEXP window class, it is nothing but regular expression window class that is assigned by QTP. Regular expression window title, again it is assigned by QTP, and all other properties that you see here. Now if you same thing, now we are seeing for a button. If I just go to the window calculator, the window object, you can see now it has the different property set, has border, has caption, has scroll bar, this horizontal scroll. This was not available for a button. So for button, these properties were not available, whereas for calculator window, these properties are available. So for all window objects, this property set that you see is same. The values might differ from one object to another object, whereas the property what you see in the left hand side is same. So this is what we call it as a standard class. So now these objects are called standard objects. If you have any queries on this, please let me know. Now I move on to understanding non-standard objects. So when you are doing it, when you are practicing it, you should not stop it at one level. You should try to spy it with various applications, including web applications. You should try to understand how the object is recognized, how the properties are recognized, just to have a feel how the class differentiates the object. That unless otherwise you get that grip, you will not be comfortable with the QTP scripts. I cannot go with all the objects, so I like you to go through all the objects and most of the controls. As I said earlier in yesterday's class, 7 to 8 controls we use regularly. Those 7 to 8 controls you need to understand. What is list box? What is combo box? What is edit box? What is multi-line edit box? Right? What is push button? What is radio button? What is checkbox? How QTP recognizes those objects? In various applications you need to see it. Right? That is part of your exercise. Before the next class, you make sure that that has been practiced. Right? Now, is it okay? Shall I move now to the next topic, that is called non-standard object. What is non-standard object? Right? Now, for that, I am now opening another application called Flight itself. So for Flight is a sample application available with QTP. So it is available under all programs, QTP, under QTP it is samples, under samples it is available. So all programs, QTP, under QTP you have a sample applications. This sample application has Flight. Right? So I am using this Flight now just to show you what is non-standard object. Agent name is always 4 characters or greater than 4 characters. Mercury is the password. By default, Mercury is the password. So you cannot change the password. Password is hard coded. Now I try to understand for this object Give me a second. Give me a second. Because I was taking another class, there I have changed some settings, so unnecessarily that will confuse you. I'll remove that settings and then I share the screen back so that your understanding is clear. Yep. Done. So now I am sharing the screen back. Just acknowledge once you are able to see the screen. So please raise your hand if you are able to see the screen. Good, thank you. Now I'm coming back to now what we are trying to see is non-standard object. What is non-standard object means? So in this flight reservation, you can now see that there are objects like list combo box. So you spy on those and then ensure that the combo box, the way the properties are listed, how it is different from button, how it is different from a normal edit box, all those things you see it. Now I go to spy. I am now going to spy an object called data flight. Now I am trying to recognize an object called data flight. This data flight, it is recognized now as win object. You can see to the right hand side, it is recognized as a win object. But we know now this data flight is an edit box. I am just going to the name object below. You can see now the name object is recognized as win edit. So whereas when I recognize this data flight, because you and me know it is also an edit box, but he is recognized as a win object. So now let us try to understand what made QTP to recognize this as a win object. Right? To understand that, first let me go through the name, select it. Now you can see that QTP is able to recognize as win edit. And if I come down, let me see the object class and native class. In object class and native class, you can see it as an edit. Right? So since it is object class, native class is edit, QTP is able to use the standard Windows add-in and recognize that object as a win edit. No, absolutely no issues. If I go to the next object that we are just discussing, data flight. If I click on to the data flight, now you can see it is recognized as a win object, but you and me feel that it is supposed to recognize as a edit box. The reason for the same is you can see now there is native class and object class. It is not edit now. It is some other name. Right? It is not an edit value. If it is object class and native class is edit, QTP can recognize it as a win edit. No issues. Where here he is not able to see that class as a standard class. So this MS Mask window class is a generic class or a custom class created by the developer. Because he has created a different class, QTP is not able to bind that to the edit box. He doesn't know this MS Mask window class means it's an edit. So what QTP knows is there is a class exist, there is an object exist, but I am not able to map that object to my standard object classes. Is this clear to you? Raise your hand. Is this clear to you? Right? Any questions? Please put it in the questionnaire. So what QTP tries to understand is with reference to the native class and object class. In this native class and object class, my standard, I have a standard classes where I can see what is the standard classes QTP is having. You will see those classes over here. I am just closing the spy window. I am coming to object identification, even though we are not going into object identification. I am choosing now the standard Windows add-in. If you see the list of classes to the left, These classes are the standard classes which has been recognized by QTP. These are all the classes or standard classes. In these classes, you never see this MS mask window class. It is not part of this class. Because it is not part of this class, but there is an object, he is able to recognize it as an object. I am going back to the SPY now. Selecting the SPY, selecting that data flight, using the hand symbol, selecting the data flight now. I select OK. So using this MS mask window class, as per QTP, it is not part of the standard class, and because of that he is recognizing as a win object. In another sense, whichever object he recognizes as a win object, it indicates to you that he is not able to map to the standard classes. What is the problem for us? The problem is the property set that you see here may not match to that object's property set. That is the technical difficulty that we may face at the later stage. So the property set that you see here, the property whatever you see here, for example, this data flight doesn't require a horizontal scroll, maximum vertical scroll position, horizontal scroll position. All these are not required at all. Do you agree with me? So left scroll bar. So this might not be required at all for a simple single line edit box. So this is why we call it as a non-standard object.